Welcome to a very special festive edition of Channels Business Global. I'm Juliana Olayinka, coming to you from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, I'll be speaking with Maryam Habibi, the Chief Revenue Officer at Aza Finance, about the fintech firm's recently launched African Women in Leadership program, aimed at increasing the percentage of African women in fintech and equipping them with the tools to increase their likelihood of reaching high management positions. And it's been a turbulent year for Bitcoin. Should we expect more of the same in 2022? I'll be putting this question and more to Simon Dixon, the CEO of banktothefuture.com. He'll be joining me from the Isle of Man. Then later, Quest Oil's corporate communications and branding manager, Gerald Moore, will be joining me from Lagos to discuss how Nigerian oil firms are preparing for the clean energy transition. But first, here are some highlights from Aza Finance's recently held African Women in Leadership program.
A brand that I was working on, a prominent brand in Kenya, they told us that they wanted all their products to be accessible by the visually impaired. So out of that curiosity of understanding, how does that work? How do I make a website be accessed by a person who can't see? How can I make an app, which is very much used by everyone, be accessible to anyone? From that, now I was introduced into research. I was asked to be I was assisting at that point. I was assisting in the research bit of it, even in the whole discovery journey of the product. And when we went to talk to the people, to the actual people who are going to use our product, we found out that the very basic thing that we wanted the users to do, the visually impaired people will not be able to do. See, was just like as simple as reading a text on a screen. That wasn't the product wasn't able to provide that. So from that, I started coming into terms with, wait, I need to design for impact. It's not about the money, as Premo has said. It's about the impact that I was bringing to the people that I was designing for. Then that's how I shifted into research.
One of the first things that blew me away when I looked up Aza was the fact that 50% of our executive team were ladies. That was the first thing that caught me. And I'm like, oh, and then when you look at the world today and people think ladies are not the ones who made it, see, just take the current example with COVID. The countries that thrived best are countries that were led by women, for crying out loud. Because one of the reasons why is because women are the only creatures that can multitask successfully. Try with a man. I've always I've mostly been in consulting, and I've consulted for businesses, so you can tell multiple businesses, local and international. But here at Aza, one of the major things that I would say has grown me is the ability to understand myself as a leader. What we do when we're setting goals, either on an annual or a quarterly basis, is everyone's goal is totally tied to the company's objectives. So what then happens is you see how you are contributing, because some companies, whether big or small, you can never tell where you're contributing, where your contribution is coming in. And the opportunity, the platform is so open here at Aza.
Well, earlier I spoke with Aza's Chief Revenue Officer, Maryam Habibi. She joined me from London. Maryam Habibi, thank you so much for joining me once again on Channels Business Global. Can you explain to me why Aza Finance created the Africa Women in Leadership Forum?
Well, Juliana, thanks for hosting me again. I mean, it's always a pleasure to be with you here on your channel. And well, Aza created this program because for us, as a company led by a woman CEO that is preaching the encouraging women in the fintech industry in general and in the African business landscape, it was just a normal thing to do. It's just to make sure that women in Africa believe in their potential, believe in their right to become the future leaders of the continent and in their countries.
Absolutely. I know the fintech sector is dominated by males. I've had several of them on Channels Business Global, very few women apart from yourself. But how reflective, Miriam, is the programme? And can you use some of your own experience within the company to explain that?
Okay, so let's say it this way. I've also been in different industries that are fully men-dominated, and I think that I was one of the lucky people that found a CEO that believes in women and their leadership capacity and how they can drive and make a change. So myself, I've been, let's say, lucky or probably had this chance to get trusted in a leadership role inside ASA. We have many women inside ASA that have been trusted also in leadership positions in our company. And this is just reflecting on how we want this to be also expanded to more women, to give them this chance to just open the eyes of different people on the potential of women and how they can make a change and show results, just same results as men or probably sometimes better results than men. So I think that this is the main objective and how my experience, the experience of Elizabeth Rosiello, our founder, and also many women within ASA is that women just can make the difference the same way as men does.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm sure the millions of women watching will be nodding their head in agreement. Going back to the Africa Women in Leadership Forum, what type of women were joining? How did it go? And what are the plans going forward?
So besides the fact that today we are also probably looking for these women that can either join us in this adventure of ASA and join us as part of our team. But besides this, even those that just are part of the program to learn about the fintech industry, to learn on how to trust themselves more. And the program was, let's say, built around this. So we have workshops that are conducted to bring these discussions about the fintechs, how the fintech world works, what are the skills that are needed to join a fintech in the fintech industry. That's regarding the fintech part. And then we have also exercises and workshops that are done to build and reinforce their leadership skills and how they can position themselves in the industry, if not at ASA, in other fintech companies that are in the market.
God, it's a very inspiring initiative, really great discussion to provoke and evoke during the Christmas and New Year period. And hopefully next time I'll be invited to one of these workshops. Miriam Habibi, Chief Revenue Officer at EZA Finance. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show, Miriam. Let's change gear now and focus our attention on cryptocurrency, Bitcoin in particular. Trading the coin has been made increasingly difficult this year. Shall we expect more of the same in 2022? I put that question to Simon Dixon, the CEO of banktothefuture.com. He joined me from the Isle of Man. Simon Dixon, it's always a pleasure to have you on Channels Business Global. I know you're a busy man making loads of money. Can you please just sum up for us what 2021 means in the world of cryptocurrency?
Well, 2021 was a really interesting year for Bitcoin. It became legal tender in the first country in the world, which means that a sovereign government used it to become, acceptable for the payment of taxes and required for citizens to accept it for payment alongside dollars. It also dealt with some of the environmental challenges that people have around the vast sum of electricity that Bitcoin's consuming. So it moved to a lot cleaner energy. And it really marks the stage for the battle of 2022, which is where central banks all around the world will be issuing central bank digital currencies and competing with Bitcoin in terms of where people will park their savings, which I think is going to be a very, very interesting political currency war that's going to happen around 2022 and beyond.
Absolutely. I don't know if you read it in the headlines, but Nigeria has its own currency, e-Naira, which went down pretty well there. I've got to say, crackdown, Bitcoin, two terms that go hand in hand. China, their central bank, announced that all transactions of cryptocurrencies are illegal. Are you concerned that more countries in the coming year will follow suit?
Well, really, we're going to have countries defining what their ideology is. So if you look at countries like El Salvador, they're deciding that they're shifting towards a more free market form of managing their money. So rather than having a central bank, rather than relying on the International Monetary Fund, and rather than solely relying on the dollar, they're deciding that they're going to allow the central bank to be Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's monetary policy is completely known into the future. Whereas other countries like China have decided that they want to move to and maintain a more communist ideal, which is central bank digital currencies, which is more control over money. And countries are going to define. Unfortunately, countries are competing for people's attention at the moment. And we're going to see this interesting situation emerge, because the central bank digital currency is all about control and Bitcoin is all about freedom. Which one prevails? Watch this space.
Yeah, we will have to watch this space and bring you on to talk about it. You got to the environment before me, because I do have to say that Bitcoin mining is becoming a concern to environmentalists, especially as we are trying to battle through this climate emergency. How are, leaders going to try and combat this, or is there a way around it?
Well, the Bitcoin electricity consumption is an important part of the security of Bitcoin. If you look at the environmental effect of Bitcoin's electricity versus the environmental effect of the entire central banking system, it's a challenging comparison to make, but Bitcoin's way more energy efficient and more environmentally friendly. The other thing to appreciate is that because people are rewarded with Bitcoin because they play the role of central bank, and rather than the banks receiving the money, individuals that mine receive the money. The most efficient energy is the one that will receive the reward. And so by innovating efficient energy, you end up with almost like a bounty program rewarding innovation, and those that have wasted electricity can allocate it towards mining Bitcoin, which then gives them a reward and moves away some of those more wastage as well. So I think the stage was set. And I believe that Bitcoin has an impact and a role, and it's a free market for people to develop cleaner forms of energy. Now, when China did the ban, a lot the miners moved to much cleaner sources of electricity than what was being used in China. So it already has had a carbon impact, and businesses that are looking to create financial products out of Bitcoin will also have their goals around meeting their responsibility climate change goals. And so you're starting to see ways of investing in Bitcoin that consider not just profitability, but also environmentally friendliness.
Absolutely. I know you are a Bitcoin man, Simon, but before I let you go, I have to ask about some of the coins. Other coins, perhaps, that you're looking to give us a heads up?
So, the cryptocurrency industry is a bit of a minefield. I like to stick to the most used use cases. So Bitcoin is digital hard sound money and the best shot of achieving it. Nothing competes with that. You then have Ethereum, which is really building a network effect around this thing called Web 3.0, which is where you can have decentralized internets, decentralized metaverses and virtual worlds. And so it's got a lot of traction there. And then, of course, you've got the good old stable coin, which is where you can have the power of sending money around the world, but the stability of a traditional fiat currency like the dollar. And so those really, you don't need to go much more exotic than that. The rest is really roll the dice. It's a bit of a casino.
It is a bit of a casino. I think that's a brilliant way to end it. Simon Dixon, CEO and co-founder of banktothefuture.com and also author of Bank to the Future. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. Thanks, Simon. Well, coming up on Channels Business Global, Quest Oil's corporate communications and branding manager, Gerald Moore, will be joining me from Lagos to discuss how Nigerian oil firms are preparing for the clean energy transition. Plus, I'll be looking back at some of the year's biggest company news stories. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channels Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a few minutes, I'll be speaking with Gerald Moore of Quest Oil. But before then, here's a flashback to some company news that made the headlines in 2021. Ocado has reported a leap in annual sales and core profitability. Best known as an online grocer, but also a provider of robotic warehouse technology, the company was the latest supermarket-style business to confirm a boost from its status as an essential retailer. Its retail business recorded a 35% leap in revenue during the year to 29th of November to just under £2.2 billion, thanks to surge in demand for deliveries during the COVID-19 pandemic. Roblox, the online video game which became increasingly popular with young children during the lockdown, is now valued at a staggering $45 billion. Following its New York Stock Exchange debut last week, shares soared 60%. Over the past 12 months, daily user numbers have rocketed by 85%. Monthly users are up by 75%, and the number of hours spent playing have more than doubled to 30 billion. At the heart of the business model is its digital currency, Robux, which Roblox sells to players to spend on games and items. Players bought and spent $1.9 billion of its digital currency last year, enough to make it one of the top grossing apps on Apple and Google devices. Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin has offered to cover $2 billion in costs in exchange for being awarded a NASA contract to help land astronauts on the moon. In April, NASA selected Elon Musk's SpaceX for the program, citing budgetary constraints. In an open letter to NASA, the billionaire founder of Amazon and the world's wealthiest person warned that the agency's contract with SpaceX could put an end to meaningful competition for years to come. NASA is yet to respond. Bezos' offer comes a week after he flew alongside 3 crewmates to the edge of space, a milestone for his company's bid to become a major player in an emerging space tourism market. Monday's outage of Facebook's social media platforms wiped $50 billion off the value of the company and $6 billion of Mark Zuckerberg's personal wealth. Bosses have since confirmed that a routing problem throttled its services, bringing operations at its site, as well as that of Facebook-owned Instagram and WhatsApp, to a screeching halt. The prolonged global shutdown was the worst to hit the firm since 2008. Virgin Galactic has sold around 100 tickets since Sir Richard Branson flew to space. The current price of the fare is $450,000. Sir Richard's company hopes to begin its first commercial space flights at the end of next year. Established in 2004, Virgin Galactic is seeking to cash in on the success of its high-profile test mission in the summer, which beat Blue Origin owner Jeff Bezos to space by just 9 days. About 600 people have tickets from the earlier round of sales, when prices were at a much lower $200,000. Now to our next topic. The future of pumping oil and gas across Africa is under threat as the world turns toward clean energy, and momentum has been stalled due to new coronavirus variants. Quest Oil Group, a value-driven energy firm providing eco-friendly and innovative services in the upstream, midstream and downstream sectors across Nigeria, has weathered the COVID-19 storm and is planning to be at the centre of the country's clean energy transition. Quest's corporate communications and branding manager, Gerald Moore, joined me earlier from Lagos. Gerald Moore, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. There's been a general lull in the global oil and gas industry because of the prolonged coronavirus pandemic. How has Quest Oil been able to weather the storm?
Thank you very much, Diana, for having me. I think one of the things that we have come to realize is that COVID-19 is probably one of the biggest catastrophes or the biggest things to happen to the global stage in the last few decades. And we're still beginning to understand, its impacts on the world. I think at the time that COVID-19 started last year, the biggest impact it had was really the drop in the global demand for oil. Industries were not utilizing as much oil as they were before, and particularly for Nigeria, which is also highly dependent on oil and gas. That meant, a lot of adjustments on our budget. If you come down to the downstream sector also, I'm sure you heard about the announcement last year also that the government was planning to remove petroleum subsidy. Of course, that in itself is not totally unconnected with COVID-19. And so we were hoping to see that will come on full stream. That money that have been used hitherto to fund subsidy will now be freed up for to go into infrastructural development. And so for us on a company level, like I said, we are learning how to adjust to this new normal. The interesting thing for us as a company is that before COVID-19 struck, we already had a model in place which allowed us to have a flexible working environment. And so the psychological impact of the COVID-19, on the people, we were able to manage that effectively. And we're also, implementing a lot of processes in place to ensure that should there be such a kind of impact on a scale that we've not seen before, we'll also be able to weather the storm. Yes.
Thank you for that thorough response, Jared. Another big talking point besides COVID-19, yes, there were other things besides that over the past 2 years, is of course the climate emergency. Just a couple of months ago, all the world leaders, including Nigeria President Muhammadu Buhari, embarked upon Glasgow, massive pledges to become clean and green. But I want to ask you, is it fair to ask Africa to stop pumping oil and gas? Because that's been one of the big questions. And if it is, how is your firm ready and prepared and willing for this energy transition?
Thank you for that question. I think, Juliana, honestly, the fair question would be, is it fair for anyone around the world right now to stop pumping oil and gas? And I will answer that question in two ways. Number one, I think we're just emerging from, like I said, one of the greatest tragedies, that's happened to the world in terms of COVID-19. And world economies are just beginning to recover. And we need a lot of energy. It needs a lot of energy to power the industries. We need a lot of energy to drive industrialization. We need a lot of it right now. And so we really can't afford to lose what we have at the moment. What we are trying to do is to achieve a sustainable environment that will support the current global goals that we have and ensure that people have a good standard of living. Employment is there without necessarily endangering our future. Of course, as you know, gas is a transition fuel for us here in Nigeria. And one of the biggest steps that the federal government has taken, which is the announcement of the National Gas Expansion Plan, provides the policy framework to allow industry players, investors to come in, which is something that has not been there before now. And so for us, because we play big also in the gas and power sector, we are already encouraging our customers to migrate. We're working with them to migrate those of them who are already in fossil fuel dependent energy systems, to migrate from there to renewable energy systems. Of course, as you know, renewable energy, it aligns with the Sustainable Development Goal 7, which talks about provision of clean, reliable, and affordable energy to all. Talk about solar, talk about thermal, and of course, other sources that will enhance their production and then support them. And so it's something that we are taking very intentionally, and we're also looking at assets that we have in the downstream sector. Of course, you also know that the auto gas, that was announced by the federal government is also a very laudable initiative that is going to transform the economy when fully implemented. And we look forward to having that, come on stream.
Thank you so much. It's definitely going to be a massive talking point into 2022 and beyond. But at least, Gerard, you're on top of your brief there. Gerald Moore, Quest's Corporate Communications and Branding Manager. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining me on Channels Business Global. Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you very much, Juliana.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Merry Christmas.